This is Beekeeper Confidential, a show about the curious lives of bees and their beekeepers. I'm your host, Mandy Shaw. I am so excited for today's show. I invited our guest on sometime last year, but she was a really busy bee and politely declined my request. But I let her know that the invitation was open because I really wanted to visit with her and learn more about her farm and her beekeeping and her incredible photography. But life gets busy, so I completely understood. She and I kept up on social media though, and one day she sent me a message saying that she was ready to join me for an episode. I enjoyed our talk so much that I did not want to cut anything out. So I'm making this a two-part feature. Delivering some Oprah Winfrey realness, she and I open up about some very personal struggles and how working with bees is the centering force that keeps us fabulous. Joining us from her 13-acre farm in West Michigan, please turn it up for Roda Shope of Indigo Acres Apiary.
Hello.
Hello, hi.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Awesome.
I'm so excited.
Well, so what do you have going on this morning?
First, I'm so excited. This is like, I realized today, I'm like, I get to sit down and like talk to a human being and just relax. So you're like my self-care today.
We're
I'm
like
so excited.
having coffee together, just chatting about bees. It's a privilege to be part of your self-care, so thank you.
So my days are pretty much, well, depending on the season, of course, the same. I get up, get the teenagers off to school, and then head out to the barn. So we have a hobby farm, around 100 critters now.
Oh.
We had more. We have a horse and a mini donkey and goats and baby doll sheep and chickens and ducks.
Oh,
we had about 100 free-range chickens in our flock, but we've had a major fox issue.
Oh.
So we've lost about half of our girls this season, which has been very, no matter, we want them to free range. I think that's very important. That's why we have chickens, and of course our perimeter is fenced in, and we have lots of protection put in place for them. But this season, back behind our acreage, there's been a new development being built, and that's kind of pushed the wildlife, of course, to where they can still survive, which is our back acreage. And so we've had more issues with predator like fox wanting to munch on our young chickens.
Wow. Oh, that's so sad. But they're just trying to survive.
They are, and I'm like, at least if you're going to kill it, please eat it. Please take it with you, because then at least you feel a little better about, it going back to nature.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And so with your farm, when did bees enter the picture?
Well, Indigo Acres, we were established in 2014, and people ask that question, when did you start? When did you want to become a beekeeper? Mm-hmm. And I say, well, when I was about 8. Oh. My dad was an avid gardener, and he would come home from work and grab his hoe, and he would head out to the garden, and that was kind of his stress relief from work. He would hoe the garden, and I would follow him out there because I loved to play out there. I was always a nature girl. I was always in the woods, and I would grab my camera, the little Kodak cameras where, you saved all your money to buy the film, and you took all the pictures of bumblebees on zinnias, and you waited for them to be developed, and they came back, and they were all blurry.
Oh.
But, then I had a simple camera, and, the technology wasn't what it is today. Thank goodness for digital photography.
Your photography is stellar. Your pictures that you post online are just absolutely gorgeous.
I never gave up. I persevered. Even as a kid, it was like I would save my money again for more film, and always to come back blurry, it proves that practice, makes perfect, or, at least you can improve, because I've just always had that draw to nature and the little things in nature, like the bumblebees on a zinnia or frogs and toads. I've always been that kind of a kid. And even now that kid still lives within me, I guess. So I was an elementary educator for over 20 years and still have a passion for just kids and education. But there was a point that I said, God, I think it's when I turned 40. And I turned 40 back in 11/11, and I said, goodness, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? It was an awakening for me. And teaching is exhausted, and you're never done, and there's so much on your plate. And I kind of was tired, I'll admit it. And at the time, I would have never admitted it, but I can look back and say I was tired. And so I said, I'm going to follow some of my other dreams too. And I took a year leave of absence and said, I'm going to build that barn and get some animals and start some beehives and just let it organically become what it will. And I'm a planner, type A personality. And I said, this one, I'm going to really try to just live for the moment, one day at a time, and let it become what it's going to become. And here I am.
How big is your farm? I mean, when I look at pictures of it, I see what looks to be dozens of beehives and vast flower gardens and seating areas. It looks like a magical place, like a tourist destination.
We felt when we built the barn and kind of started this new adventure, we knew that once you have animals, it's difficult to travel, and I love to travel. So I knew that was something that was going to have to go a bit on the wayside. So our philosophy was, let's create our staycation. All the things that we love in life right here on our 13 acres in West Michigan. So that's when we said, okay, we'll build a barn and get our fuzzy critters that we love and be able to have those fresh eggs and let them free range the way, chickens should live. And I've been an avid gardener thanks to my dad and what I learned from him my whole life. So love growing my own fruits and vegetables. And of course, perennials and herbs and flower gardening has been, I can't remember a time I wasn't doing those things.
Yeah.
So when we started adding the bees, which right now we're at 17 colonies, and I just started playing with, rearing my own queens. So that's been exciting. I love that. But with the hopes to expand, I don't know, my family says, Mom, when is enough enough? No, and I ask myself that too, because I'm kind of an all or nothing person.
Yeah.
But I decide that I want to, on our acreage, be able, it's not just about the bees, it's about the plants that sustain them. And so I want to have a balance. I don't want them to have to, forage 2 miles away if they don't have to. Mm-hmm. So it's truly naturalizing our property. Over half of it is natural, either wooded or meadows. We have a natural pond, all of the great things that benefit them, but then truly adding and planting for them.
I mean, you have cultivated such a paradise. I think that's very inspiring.
It's fun. So my number in my head, I guess, is maybe 30. Mm-hmm. Ask me in a couple of years. We'll see what
happens. Well, bee math is an interesting thing, isn't it? I started in my first year, I had 5 colonies, and I am just finishing up my 4th year, and I have 20, and I am projecting to grow to possibly 30 next year. But I don't have 13 acres, so I have to spread my bees around town, which is hard because I don't get to see them all the time. And like one of the places is a rooftop. I can't cultivate that space the way that I want to.
Right. It's I can't imagine, your days just in and out of a car. I look at just when I load my Gator up. Uh-oh, you have a fuzzy.
Oh, yes, that's Winnie. She's very sensitive to any kind of activity outside, and we even put like vinyl film on the windows to sort of distort what we can see out the windows. But if she sees any movement, or sometimes no movement at all, she starts barking and then has to go outside and be a guard dog.
Oh, fun.
Oh, but yeah, driving around town and taking care of my bees, and then I take care of other people's bees too. So it's a lot of driving around, and the back of my van gets trashed all the time from moving beehives and all my gear, and like the smoker tipping over and spilling ash everywhere, propolis all over the place.
Oh, I can't. I just look at the Gator, which I go out to my bee cottage where I store everything and load up for the day and put it in the Gator, and I tool around the property. You know, our hives are spread out. We don't have them on one spot, so I have some in the pollinator garden and some up in the front meadow and some out by the barn and others back in my educational area. And we're moving out to the back 7 acres next year. So just keeping them really spread out. And so, you know, I sometimes think, oh, here I am back in the Gator. And then I think, wow, Mandy's driving all over town. I shouldn't be paid.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I drive 45 minutes to get to a client. And it's hard because I'm at the point where I think, you know, for 2020, there are going to be people that I won't be able to go and help because the demands on my time are so great, and it just doesn't make sense from a business standpoint to spend that much time driving to help somebody with their bees, even though I want to help everybody.
Right. Well, I don't know if you find this too, but every year and the older I get, I find that my time is so much more valuable. It compared to when I think back even in my 20s, and, you know, the days pass, it's carefree, and then 30s go by and 40s go by, and now in a couple years I'm staring at 50, and you really are I just embrace time, and it's so valuable, and really choosing how I use that time and making sure that, you know, the activities that I'm, you know, involved in truly bring me joy. Life's too short.
Yeah, life is really short. And I wonder, when you first left your job as a teacher, was it hard for you to learn that mindset of doing the things that bring you joy?
I needed to learn that. Yeah. And I think that's the greatest gift that the bees have given me, in a sense, being a very, I guess, anal to a fault, type A, organized person, and just wanting everything perfect. You realize that, like I said, I was tired. I took a step back, and I'm like, well, now what do I do with my days? And you find yourself sometimes diving into those same behaviors, and it's like, wait a minute, I'm not in control here. And truly learned with not only the bees, but even with the other animals, I play the role more of a facilitator. You know, the honeybees know best. Who am I to say what happens in a colony? I like to think I'm a guest and they will put up with me. Yeah. But truly, I act as more of a facilitator and trust the workings of the hive and trust them and just step in when it's absolutely necessary. Mm-hmm. And then they've given me the beautiful gift. It's like my therapy. And I don't know if you feel that way.
I do.
I've always felt like I have the best therapist in the world, and her name is Mother Nature. And I am happiest when I'm outside. But the bees are the one time that my head is clear. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not multitasking in my head of 1,000 things that need to be done. Mm-hmm. I'm just clear. And it's almost, I love yoga and meditation. And I found that I don't meditate much anymore because my time with the bees is truly it's almost a meditative state for me. Yeah. And I explain that to people and they say, are you insane? You know, afraid you're going to get stung. And September can be rough and they're all kind of cranky, but, you know, any other time, it's truly just such amazing, you know, experience.
Yeah, I know for me, sometimes I can be having a day where I haven't slept well because I've been up for hours during the night, my mind buzzing on hundreds of different things that I need to do or that I'm planning to do. And then my husband and I, we had adopted a child 6 years ago, and we didn't realize it at the time, but he has fetal alcohol syndrome and an array of neurodevelopmental disabilities. And while he is a very smart, articulate, brilliant child, he has some extremely challenging behaviors, and it has taken a very significant toll on our family life and
I can imagine
my ability to even hold a regular job. And so that is something in my life that, is extremely draining. And
right.
I can be at a really low point and almost feel too tired to go and work with the bees, but I force myself to do it. And then, like you said, like when I'm in the beehive, my mind is clear because I'm in the moment. And afterwards, I feel relieved. I feel like I've been lifted up. And my work with the bees, I think, has really helped me to weather this storm in my life. Well, as an educator, I'm sure that you had kids that had similar afflictions where they simply could not control themselves because of the brain damage.
And it's a challenge. And I always look at, we're never given anything in life that we can't handle. And so on those days that you are truly, feeling like, can I do this? You can. You wouldn't be given this gift, even if it's a really hard gift sometimes.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be given this gift if you weren't that perfect person to be able to weather that journey. But it does take a toll, and I think that's why the bees truly can be, self-care. Mm-hmm. And when we take the time, whether it's bees or gardening or just to walk in the woods, when we take the time to replenish our spirit, I guess it not only allows us to heal, but it helps us better heal those around us. Yes. Because I guess when you think the relationship you have with yourself truly sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. Yeah. So if we're good as moms and as beekeepers and as friends and daughters and sisters and spouses, if we're in a great place and we're strong and healthy, we can take care of all of those people around us. So, like you, my bees are my replenishing time.
Yeah. And, this is so funny because I'm like totally shifting the conversation here, but you had a giveaway recently where you were giving away a copy of The Honey Bus by Meredith May. And I won the drawing. I was super excited. And, you had written that the book really resonated with you. It's a girl who was saved by the bees. And reading that, I felt that connectivity as well. And I just interviewed Meredith for the show. So I got to spend some time with her talking about her experience and finding healing from the bees. And this feels full circle to me to be able to be talking with you now. And I just talked with her.
Magical. It truly is.
Yeah. Gosh, you're doing a lot with your bees. Do you want to talk about being a Bee Vital ambassador?
Sure.
Okay.
It's
how did that end up happening?
I actually didn't even start and venture into the social media world until it was about a year ago in August. I avoided it as long as I could.
You're so good at it.
Yeah, but social media is tricky. Yeah. It truly is. There are many good things about it, but as you know, it can come with some difficulties too. And I know we're kind of getting off tangent here. I should warn you. I should have warned you in the beginning. I'm kind of like spaghetti. I'll start and I'm going 1,000 directions, but I will get back to the Bee Vital.
I love tangents, and you know what? I've had listeners comment on certain episodes where they'll say, like, I love the tangents that you guys went off on. So bring on the spaghetti.
So here, a little spaghetti, and I'll get back to the main perfection, but social media is a challenge, I think, for a person like myself who can be a perfectionist and tries not to be. And because you're out there and you're seeing all these, beautiful sights and photography, and then you're seeing how people are doing things maybe differently than you might be doing things. And it's like it's like the record screeching, to stop the record on the record player and say, whoa, 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 Rhoda, stop. And remind yourself of the little social media rules you set up for yourself when you said, fine, I will start a business site on Instagram, but I will remember these things. I'm not going to compare to anybody else, and I'm going to stay in my lane. And it's hard to stay in your lane sometimes, but I'm going to try that. And I'm going to make real connections, because I think social media, I see it with my teenagers, see it with students, those real connections are lost. And I tell my kiddos all the time, you can't have a relationship based on text messages. Yeah. You need to sit next to that person. You need to talk to them. You need to create memories with them. So that was my other one. If I was going to be on social media, I was going to make sure that I was making connections, actually having real conversations with people, whether I see something they post and I reach out and private message and talk to them that way, or
come on their podcast.
Yeah, there you go. When people message me about beekeeping questions, I say, well, first, just remember, this is what works for me. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean it might work for you. But just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong, and that's a phrase that I live by. So trying to make connections that way and just keeping it real and authentic. Mm-hmm. And then the number one thing I think is most important for me is to remember using my social media tools or platforms to make an impact rather than to impress. I want to make a difference. I want to inspire people.
That's very smart.
I don't need
advice.
to impress anyone. The only person I'm really in competition with is myself. I don't need any more competition with that because I'm hard enough on myself as it is. So I think when I remind myself of those things, stay in my lane, don't compare. Oh, and then it's okay to remain a bit of a mystery. Mm-hmm. It is a business site for me. I don't kind of share a lot of personal things. Mm-hmm. I like people to see who I am and my quirky self, but I think it's okay to remain a bit of a mystery. And, there's something about just keeping your private life to yourself, too, and respecting my family and their wishes. My kids really don't probably want to be plastered all over my social media site. So it's just a balance like everything else. But my spaghetti is coming back to your question. So when I started my site, Vitals started following me, and I started following them and just really paying attention to their products and just, learning about them. They're a company actually out of Austria. And I was really interested because all of my practices are, natural, organic. Of course, I'm not going to treat for mites unless I have to, if my threshold is above. Recommending, of course, I'm not going to avoid treatment either because when you look at the whole natural beekeeping philosophy, I like to live by that. But at the same time, the minute I committed to my sweet bees and put them in man-made boxes, I kind of threw the whole natural beekeeping thing out the window because they're not in the trunk of a tree anymore. So, with that, if I do need to treat for varroa, or if I do need to step in and feed, which I'm only going to do if absolutely necessary, we leave at least 80 pounds of honey in each of our hives to overwinter before we take any honey off. Mm-hmm. But even with new colonies, if I need to feed because they don't have the honey they need to get through our long, crazy Michigan winters, it's like, what are some products out there that can help? And so they reached out to me about trying Bee Strong, which is the product that's available in the U.S. And I have to say, I was really impressed. And I wouldn't commit to, of course, being an ambassador until I tried their product and really, noticed the difference. And I have to say, I did my own little experiments with hives that were in a similar situation. Okay, I'm going to feed them add Be Strong to my syrup on these hives and not on these. And I was fascinated with, not only the product itself, where the proteins in the product are actually from egg whites. So just looking at the makeup of it and saying, am I going to see a difference? And I did. And so I was willing to come on board and support, an all natural product, that I used my hives.
I'm going to be trying that product this upcoming year because I've been following them online too, and it looks like it really, really does help that boost their brood and just gives them like a vitamin almost.
I look at it, it's like their health and wellness smoothie for the day.
Yeah.
It's longer than that. But I had to give you an example of what really sold me on Be Strong. I had one of my amazing colonies. It happened to be Queen Louise, who was my first colony. Now she's really Queen Louise the Fourth, but she has always been just incredible, bursting from the seams. Just an amazing colony. And we had a rough winter last winter, and this spring in March, when I popped open that hive to check on her, I'm like, oh my goodness, this, mammoth hive is down to just really small numbers. That I look at my other hives that were more of an average size, we're starting to, really make headway and already saying, wow, this cluster is looking great for March. And I'm looking at poor Louise going, what is going on? So immediately our temps were okay to start feeding, and I started Be Strong and said, well, let's see what can happen, because I was shocked that this colony that has always been so strong would be like, are you guys going to make it through the spring? Because in the winter when it's super cold, they don't go through the resources. If we're going to lose bees in our area, it's going to be March and April, considering the dandelions don't bloom until the beginning of May. So that's their first really guaranteed food source. Now, when the maple trees and the willows start to blossom, if the temps are warm enough for the bees to forage, it's great. And this spring, we had a couple warm weeks when everything aligned beautifully. They packed in a ton of pollen from the trees. Some years, the year before, we had a massive snowstorm mid-April, and they would have been stuck. So if they can get out and forage, it's great. If they can't, those are the months that are more detrimental, and potentially, we have losses in, March and April. Then in the winter, which, knock on wood, I've yet to lose a hive. I keep crossing, or a colony.
Job.
I keep crossing my fingers, but the day I do, you're going to see me crying like a baby in a fetal position.
Oh, sure.
But I know it'll happen. It's most likely will happen. It happens to all of us, right? So I remind myself, it's okay.
Yeah.
So no, I see spaghetti. I'm coming back now. Here we go. Queen Louise. So I started eating syrup and with Be Strong in it, and I was amazed within a month, going from a pathetically spotty brood pattern, and I'm like, okay, this was a new queen in the fall. That's when Queen Louise the Fourth took over, and I'm like, this should not be happening. And just the brood that happened, these gorgeous, perfect frames of brood, and just the amount of bees. And ironically, or maybe not ironically, I just tallied up all of my honey I took from each of the colonies, and Queen Louise was still, she's my reigning queen. We ended up harvesting almost 80 pounds of honey from her hive this season. And that's
amazing.
leaving about 80 pounds in her hive for the winter.
Wow.
So to see my Mecca hive, in a sense, and I have a few of them, her offspring, now that I'm, using her as kind of my mother queen, and her offspring, and those hives are doing amazingly well too. So the genetics are there, and I want to hang on to it so tightly. So to open that up, it's kind of like, your stomach just hits rock bottom. And I said, well, perfect timing. Let's try and see what happens. So I'm sold.
It's awful to to lose a colony to starvation because it's preventable. Just
Right.
the simple act of giving them food.
Right. And I look at it as much as I really dislike feeding sugar syrup. If it means losing an entire colony or feeding, I'm going to feed.
Mm-hmm.
Even leaving 80 pounds of honey for each colony each winter, I still, because I'm a worrywart, I still add winter patties on top of that.
Yeah.
Because I can't help it. And I've seen where I've opened things up in March and it was so cold, there could be 40 or 50 pounds of honey left. And you still see rows of starved little bees with their heads in little cells because they couldn't get to it. And that breaks your heart because it's breaking that cluster to be able to get where they need to be. So winter is tough here. I am the crazy lady every day that walks to each of my hives and puts my ear up next to it to listen to hear that buzz to know they're okay.
Oh, well, you love them.
I do.
You're an excellent caretaker. Our winters here in Portland, like, we don't have long, cold winters. We don't have heavy snow, but every 5 years or so, usually we might get a dusting of snow in the wintertime, and that's pretty much it. It's just really wet and cool.
Wet is hard too, though.
Ugh, yeah. Yeah, so we have to deal with the moisture, but not the cold temperatures. I mean,
I actually think the moisture is more difficult.
we use a lot of quilt boxes and have to have the upper ventilation. Some beekeepers here say don't insulate your hives because it's going to trap too much moisture in there. I'm on the opposite side of that. I like to insulate them, but I have to have an upper entrance. I have to have a quilt box, something to help absorb all the moisture.
I actually think moisture is worse. What I'm finding is the cold isn't what kills bees. It's moisture that kills bees. And when I'm working with students here in our area, I always tell them, I said, there's two pieces of equipment that are most important for your hive to be successful. In my opinion, now once again, what works for me here in our area might not work for other people, but for me, it's the slatted rack, which is essential, and I have on all of my hives, and a hot box or a quilt box. And it's like, if you spent this much, usually it's a money thing. Well, I don't want to spend any more money. I've spent this much money. Or I'm like, no. You're going to lose your bees and you're going to be starting with nothing. So just, if you're going to do it, go all the way. A slatted rack is $18 through Man Lake.
Yeah.
Buy it. It's the best $18 you're going to ever spend. Go get your hot box, get your quilt box, because cold doesn't kill them. Moisture will.
Yeah. Tell me about the slatted rack. What do you like about it?
Let me count the ways or the things I love about the slatted rack. Truly, it is my favorite piece of equipment. And I get all excited and people look at me like I'm a nut. But we go in Michigan, in our area, our summers can be 90 plus degrees with the humidity where you walk outside and you feel like you've hit a brick wall and you're sweating standing there.
Ew.
To the winters, which we can have, 3 feet of snow on the ground, wind chills to -30. So we go from, and everything in between. Like yesterday, it was crazy humid, 83 degrees. Today, it's like 61 and we've had thunderstorms.
Oh my gosh.
So tomorrow it could snow. You never know. Welcome to West Michigan. So the slatted rack in the winter gives that extra 1.5 inches of space between my screen bottom board, which of course I close off in the winter, and then that bottom deep. So for drafts and, kind of trapping that cold air in that space in the winter is helpful, but it's just as helpful in the summer when it's really hot, giving that extra air space and having that extra opening. It gives, a little congregation area for the bees. And I do notice the queen then will lay all the way down to the bottom of each frame when that slatted rack is in place. Which is a bonus. We all like eggs, so I'm all about more eggs. So my queens lay all the way to the bottom of every frame in that bottom deep because of that extra space, especially when it's swarm season and there's tons of congestion. Mm-hmm. Just having that extra space there really helps with airflow, ventilation. So I'm an advocate. Poster child for the slatted rack.
Now, I have a couple slatted racks that are not in use because I just wasn't really, I don't know, I didn't get excited about them, but I will put them on my hives and I will get excited about them.
I just love them. And looking at our seasons and the crazy moisture and the hot and the cold, I know I'm the person that anything about 75, I feel like I'm dying. So I'm all about airflow. And so I'm like, well, the bees, I've got to think about how they're feeling right now, too. And
yeah.
I just find that it really helps, especially when those hives are just bursting from the seams at swarm time and with that spring buildup. Mm-hmm. Anything to help with congestion. And, the last thing I want is swarming. So just staying on top of it.
Join us for the second half of this conversation on the next episode of Beekeeper Confidential. But in the meantime, be sure to look for Rhoda and her bees on Facebook and Instagram by searching Indigo Acres Apiary. Thank you all for listening. Until next time, may the buzz be with you. Beekeeper Confidential is a Waggleworks production and is written and produced by Mandy Shaw.